let us get into history, sir.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What's the days of history this week?
So this is going to be running from November 29th through December 5th. Hard to believe that, like, we've already made it. Like, this year's basically over,
Yes.
and it just kind of flew by, just like that. I guess that's how it always goes. So I have a pretty healthy list of things that happened this week in history. So you ready? We have a pretty wide variety of kind of genres and topics that are in here too. So November 29th, 1972, little video game, which I don't think I've ever put a video game in on This Week in History, but a little video game called Pong was released.
Oh.
Kind of like it was definitely the first commercially successful
Yeah, I
video
was
game.
first commercially successful.
It definitely was not the first video game, but one that I imagine most people have played. Well, now that I think about that, I bet there's a lot of young people that haven't played Pong.
Yeah, now it is for sure. Yeah, I remember my dad talking about this and playing it for the. He was like, "Yeah, I remember playing Pong when I was like your age." And I was like, "No one cares, Dad." But no, yeah, that's how old Pong is. I think the first was Space Invade, the game they made at like a college lab basically.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a Space Invaders ish.
But it's missile defense, isn't it?
Yeah, where you're the little triangle and then.
Oh, that's Asteroid.
There you go.
Yeah.
But
There's that. There's a gymnastics game that was on the computer where you had to like hit two buttons to like make your dude run.
Yeah.
There's like one of those. There's like obviously they were very like, I guess primitive is kind of the right word for it, especially compared to the way games are now.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, there's just limitations, unfortunately.
Yeah, technological limitations. November 30th, probably one of the the most events that I've had for a single day that we've been doing this. November 30th, 1835, Samuel Langhorne Clemens is born, but you probably know him better as Mark Twain.
Oh, okay.
Bum, 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 bum. Plot twist. So Mark Twain was born on this day, or on November 30th, 1835. Obviously famous for many novels, but Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer being probably the two big ones.
Yes.
That and he's the one, isn't he the one where it's like reports of my death are greatly there was like a newspaper like front page thing that like Mark Twain had died, and then he held a press conference and was like, reports of my death are greatly exaggerated or whatever. I'm pretty sure that's him. Also
OG of that.
Yeah. Also November 30th, 1874, another big birthday, this one being for Winston Churchill. He was Prime Minister of Great Britain through World War II, following up Neville Chamberlain. And he served as Prime Minister again in the 50s, I believe, after Queen Elizabeth took the throne. So he served Prime Minister twice. Probably one of the top 5 most important people of the 20th century.
Yes.
I would say.
Half American, to know.
Yes.
Yeah, a guy that went through extraordinary struggles. Yeah, because he was just as vulnerable or as just in danger as any other British citizen at the time.
Yeah.
Just getting bombed. Obviously he had a little bit more protection, but still, anything could have fell and he probably could have perished. But yeah, I'm not too sure if that's. Remember the story or in the movie, what was the movie called?
Darkest Hour.
Darkest Hour. Where he goes into the tube
Mm-hmm.
and talks. I don't know if that was fictional or not. I think that was.
It's kind of something that the like Hollywood depictions of him would make me believe kind of actually happened.
Okay. But regardless, stuff like
just
that.
How they portray his character, it seems like something he would do.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, a very extraordinary man.
Yeah, but that's also a really good movie if you're interested. Just kind of like a Spark Notes version of what Churchill did. At least part of what Churchill did during World War II. The Darkest Hour. Gary Oldman won Best Actor for his portrayal of Churchill. So
also another good way to see him in his later years is in the Queen Elizabeth, or what was it called? Or the Netflix series.
That's The Crown.
Oh, The Crown.
That's John Lithgow as Winston Churchill.
Yeah. So it's
also a very good portrayal as well.
Yes.
And yet another birthday. We got all kinds of birthdays on this day. November 30th. This is more of kind of like a pop culture birthday. 1929. Dick Clark was born. He obviously kind of rose to fame as the host of American Bandstand way back in the day in like the 50s and 60s. American Bandstand was kind of like that and like the Ed Sullivan Show, I'd say, were like the big platforms for like up and coming bands and singers and such.
It's like the MTV of that time.
Kind of, yeah.
In a way. Well, we don't really have MTV. It's not really that anymore or what it used to be, but yeah.
So like he was really famous for being the host of American Bandstand. He then kind of pivoted into like the game show world with what was originally the $10,000 pyramid and then became $100,000 pyramid, which was like one of the biggest game shows. I remember like I used to watch episodes of that all the time on GSN, the game show network, back when they had like it was like that and Match Game and all sorts of like old game shows like that that I used to watch all the time. So I'm probably most familiar with him there. And then, of course, most people are going to be familiar with Dick Clark from New Year's Rockin' Eve. So, like, the Ryan Seacrest has taken over now since Dick Clark passed away. But for, like, many, many years, he was responsible for, like, putting on the New Year's, like, with the ball drop in New York and all that.
That was Dick Van Dyke.
No, Dick Van Dyke is totally different. Isn't Dick Van Dyke the dude from The Sound of Music?
I know, but is it... I thought it was, like, So it's Dick Clark Rockin' Eve New Year's show or something like that, right? That's what they call it? Okay.
New Year's Rockin' Eve.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think he also, if I remember correctly, I didn't put this one down, but he was also the host for... Oh, no, never mind. That's Bob Eubanks, I think. Wait,
Okay.
Is it? I was thinking, who used to do the Rose Parade, the like main Rose Parade announce?
Oh, I have no...
There was like the same two people that like I think it was on Channel 4. Like they did the commentary for the Rose Parade like every year for like a long time.
No, I never watched the Rose Parade on TV because I was always actually there. So.
Oh well then. Okay.
Well, no, because there was no way to record it back in the day, really. I mean, unless you have VHS. Like my dad never did that, so.
Okay. Well then. Another birthday number 4. Oh wait, I actually have 5 birthdays in this day. Number 4, November 30th, 1937. We were just talking about a franchise of this person's. Ridley Scott is born.
Ridley Scott was born in 1937?
Yeah, that dude's old.
Oh my god.
So he's obviously probably most famous for the Alien franchise.
He's still alive?
Yeah. That just blow your mind?
Yeah.
He won Best Picture in 2000 for The Gladiator. He was the director of The Gladiator. And obviously he's had his hands in a huge number of other significant projects.
Oh, did he do the recent Alien movie too? Alien Covenant?
Yes.
That was him?
And he did Prometheus. What else? He did something else that was pretty...
It wasn't received like with the Academy really well, but it was other movies.
I'm going to look up his like filmography really quick.
There's something in there that I'm not remembering.
He's done like he did Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, there we go.
He won the Best Picture for...
Yeah, because he did the recent one too.
I think he was like a producer on that one.
Okay, never mind.
He was involved, but I don't think he... television projects, films... Thelma and Louise is a Ridley Scott film. I don't know why this is not giving me like just a nice list. He did Hannibal with Anthony Hopkins.
Okay.
Black Hawk Down.
Oh, that was him.
Matchstick Men. Kingdom of Heaven. Recent and upcoming films. What do we got here? American Gangster. Body of Lies. Robin Hood. That must have
American
been an
Gangster. That was with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe, right?
Yes. More sequels to Alien. He did Prometheus. Brave New World. Anyway, so like he's had his fingers in quite a number of projects over the years. He's probably one of the most I don't know. He will go down as one of the greatest directors like that there has ever been, but I feel like he's he keeps getting himself into projects that are like tarnishing that reputation a little bit.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So like that sort of thing. So, but obviously like one of the most influential members of like the Hollywood elite that there's been in like especially coming up through like the 70s, like with what he did with Alien and stuff like that, and then probably honestly kind of culminating with Gladiator. Not that he hasn't done good things since then, but like Gladiator was kind of like the peak, probably.
Yeah.
Final birthday on November 30th, 1982. Oh, this is not a birthday. Oh yeah. Oh, I skipped one. There was another birthday. 1962. Last birthday. Bo Jackson. Putting, I guess, our fingers in all of our little topics that we talk about. I don't really have sports people on here too often either. But Bo Jackson is the only person to ever be on an all-star team in like 2 major professional sports. So obviously played both in the NFL and the and in MLB for the Kansas City Royals. Something that would never ever be allowed to happen today. But he was someone that like excelled in both, which was pretty impressive.
Very difficult these days because of the money invested into athletes.
Yeah, I mean they don't even let you play. I mean when we were in high school, like our baseball coach didn't let us play more than one sport, like let alone playing that at a professional level.
Well, yeah. Well, I would think that was just because of the coach you had. Because there was definitely good football players that played baseball as well, like Chris Peel,
Sean Peel.
Or Sean Peel. So, okay, whatever. But regardless, yeah, that's what I meant. Well, I think it's also they want to focus. I guess maybe he just wants you to focus on baseball.
I know, but I don't really think that it's that uncommon of a thing to like even at that age to be forced to kind of into one sport if you're going to take it seriously.
I guess, but I mean, you have the guy from Oklahoma that got drafted by the A's and is playing football for Oklahoma. Who's a multi-sport kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yeah, I know.
I just think baseball and football are like the bigger of the two, getting paid like in a way, I guess.
Baseball for sure. I don't know about the NFL.
Well, I meant more than basketball though, like the average basketball player.
I don't know. I think what drags the average down is because there's more NFL players.
Yeah. Okay, whatever. But yeah. But
'Cause
Bo Jackson definitely an influential player. He kind of was before Jordan, I think, actually. Like shoe deals. Like he was like the guy that like be like Bo.
It would have been like maybe just before.
Yeah.
'Cause he would have been in his prime like late 80s. And then Jordan was winning all those titles with the Bulls in like late 80s, early 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But like the
so
shoe
around
deals,
the same time, yeah.
The shoe deal, like he was like one of the first kind of guys, and then Nike got both him and Jordan. But yeah.
20 years later, November 30th, 1982. Moving to another topic that we don't hit a whole lot in This Week in History. Michael Jackson's Thriller album was released November 30th, 1982, and it is the best-selling album of all time.
Yes. Very hyped.
Do you even like Michael Jackson's music?
Not really.
Dust! All right.
I can appreciate it, but I'm not really into him as much, I guess. I can't really appreciate single artists, I guess. Does that make any sense?
Nope, but okay. November 30th, 1998. Exxon, I don't know why I said Exxon and Mobil Oil merged to create what was at the time the world's largest company, worth $73.7 billion. And now today, obviously, they're known as ExxonMobil. It's one kind of big conglomerate that owns a huge market share of the oil production in the United States.
I just really consider them just Mobile One. Or just Mobile.
Just Mobile?
Yeah, when I see them.
Yeah, because you don't see... Well, I think it's just because like, we're in California. If you go to other parts of the country, like those gas stations say Exxon.
Yeah, but still, I'm just like...
It's kind of a regional thing, yeah. So that was 20 years ago today. That takes us finally to December 1st. There were quite a lot of things that I had there in the tail end of November. December 1st, 1935, Woody Allen is born. Probably one of the most famous actors, I would say. Actor and like eventually producer in Hollywood, like young Hollywood at the time. Very influential to kind of, I was probably not only was he part of kind of that golden generation of people that we think of, but like also influenced very heavily like the next group of people that came after him.
This is also James's birthday. I believe December 1st.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nice. Shout out to James.
Shout out to James.
December 1st, 1940. Another kind of pioneer. Pioneer is probably the right word for this one. Richard Pryor was born on this day in 1940. One of the most influential stand-up comics of all time, for sure. Just like with his style and his, for the time, I would say his like boldness, like the sort of topics that he was willing to cover, I think also kind of set him aside from other people.
And it influenced a lot of younger African American comedians as well, like Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, and I'm blanking on the other guy I was thinking of right now that I'm not thinking. But yeah, definitely. And then just people in general. Chappelle. There we go. Dave Chappelle. But yeah, I mean, it's weird to see how far his career actually expanded. And to see the other comedians that he worked with, like Joe Rogan remembers like watching him when he was a kid and then working in the same clubs as him, like in his beginning of his career, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
and talk about, like, even though the tail end of his career was not the best, obviously, because it's just a deterioration of him. But yeah, one of my like favorite comedians to listen to in general. I remember we wanted to go see Joe Rogan and we listened to Richard Pryor on the way up, and you were laughing at some of those jokes, even though they're definitely outdated, but they can get you.
He was definitely like a product of the times.
Yeah.
Like,
but definitely a very bold comedian. And was somewhat necessary. I mean, I don't think he would survive with those kind of jokes these days.
Yeah.
But there's some people that do.
But he broke down a lot of walls, just like in his like boldness and brazenness, like in his stand up.
Yeah, the next kind of guy I could think of that's like that kind of has his very bold and vulgar just language is Joey Diaz, who's very funny. This is like a latest special, Degenerate. It has a very good not complete parallels, but they're just as funny in my eyes.
Okay. Yeah. Another birthday on December 1st, 1945. Bette Midler is born. One of the, again, with, I guess, like the word influential keeps coming up, but like one of the most probably important and significant major singers to like come out of this time period.
What year?
She was born in 1945.
Okay.
So like coming like in like the mid to late 60s, like when she really came to prominence, and which was like the right time for like her style of music. So obviously like very important. Female, one of the like probably greatest female singers that there ever has been. Completely pivoting topics. December 1st, still 1955, 10 years later, was the day that Rosa Parks refused to go sit in the back of the bus at a bus stop in Montgomery, Alabama. A few days later, obviously it was like that was against the law for her not to move. Like where she was seated, it was against the law for her to be there. But she refused to move. It ended up sparking like a bus boycott like a few days later. And it was like really one of the like major moments in like the civil rights movement, I would say.
Yeah, she wasn't the first person to do this, I believe. I forgot the other lady's name that did this not too long ago, and then Rosa Parks I think was maybe I'm not too sure. It's always changes for some reason. But she passed away not too long ago as well. But yeah, very historic kind of stand towards actual civil rights issues. And yeah, very brave of her to do that as well.
December 2nd, 1804. Napoleon crowns himself Emperor of France in Notre Dame Cathedral, which is in Paris. A place that I was able to visit, I guess, a couple years ago now. Went on to define probably at least the next like 10 years or so of European history, really, up until like Waterloo. So like probably one of the biggest, most significant moments of the 19th century is like Napoleon coming to power in France.
Yes, nationalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Napoleon, I believe, was the first person to ever combined like the professional military and conscripts together and basically take over Europe,
Mm-hmm.
which was crazy.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the royal families in Europe are very afraid of those kind of ideas. But yeah, it's very, I mean, it's kind of why Napoleon was so successful.
Mm-hmm. December 2nd, 1823, the Monroe Doctrine was officially introduced. Obviously created by, created by the president at the time, James Monroe. Kind of gave his namesake to this. And the Monroe Doctrine basically states that the West is no longer to be colonized. Like North and South America have like demonstrated their ability to govern themselves, basically. So it was the United States like taking a stand against European colonialism and like what was still like kind of the New World.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of a big like policy to take, especially for what it was still like barely 10 years removed from Britain like spanking us in the War of 1812. So bold move, Cotton.
Yeah, I think the reason why we moved west and why obviously we gained land, but it's also just to prevent Europe, because not all people understand. Like obviously today, like Europe, it's like, oh, they're friends, but like Europe at the time, yo, those are gangsters, dog. You don't want to mess with Europe, and that's why we definitely moved across the country, and we've expanded, and kicked out the French, kicked out the Spanish, obviously kicked out the English.
Paid off the French.
Well, but yeah, but still, kicked them out.
But I mean, but this was I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit the mic there. This was kind of like America was declaring this policy, but it was also like to help and like alongside other countries like in the New World. I mean, in Central and South America, and like obviously Mexico, not terribly long after this, like a couple decades, like got its independence from France. So like this was kind of like a public declaration that like Europe's practices were not going to be tolerated any longer in like the New World. Yeah.
And also that they were not going to have any kind of, I mean, they're still present in some of the islands, but they weren't going to be as dominant as they were. Yeah. Kind of changing of guard as well.
Mm-hmm.
But not completely yet.
Yeah, not yet. But yeah. Kind of like when you could see it kind of tilting that way a little bit.
It was a step.
Yeah.
It was a step.
I lost my spot here. December 2nd, 2001. So a good almost couple hundred years later. One of the more, is tragic the right word? I'm not sure. Like, I guess just sad stories kind of came to an end a little bit with Enron filing for bankruptcy. So obviously Enron was caught like taking money from probably millions of people, if not like hundreds of thousands of people that like lost their life savings because of what Enron was doing, like kind of wasting their money away. And then when Enron got caught and like had to like pay everything back, the company went bankrupt. And so December 2nd, 2001, they declared bankruptcy. They fired for chapter 10 or chapter 11 or whatever, title 11, I forget what it's called, for like corporate bankruptcy or whatever. So
yeah, I think they made a movie about this or some kind of weird series.
Mm-hmm. There's a movie.
Yeah, I forgot who's in it.
It was someone, I want to say it was someone mildly famous, like Matt Damon or something like that.
Oh no. It was like an employee that just got hired at Enron or something like that, and then it just talks about like being in Enron itself and then watching everything implode, I think. Or maybe this might be a different movie, different.
I think that's right.
It's the one. Have you remember Leverage?
Mm-hmm.
The guy that
literally that whole show. Timothy Hutton is the like main dude.
Not Timothy Hutton. It's the guy that like fights everyone for them.
Oh,
the muscle.
Christian. Is it Christian? I'm not sure. I have it right here, I think. Oh, maybe I do not. Wait,
maybe it's a different movie.
I know what you're talking about here. I'll just look up Leverage.
It wasn't a very popular or well received, I think.
We actually
Adaptation
watched
of
that
it.
movie in school as like to learn about. Apparently, it's like somewhat accurate. And
Yeah,
we
yeah.
actually watched that movie in school to like learn what happened. Christian Kane
Yeah.
is the guy.
There you go.
Oh, Timothy Hutton's actually in that movie. Oh, never mind.
That's
I
Leverage.
forgot that I was looking at Leverage for a second. I was like, oh, Timothy Hutton was in Enron as well. Yeah. Let me see if I can find the name of that movie real quick.
But yeah, I remember watching that in high school. And then watching everything implode.
Filmography. Probably wouldn't have been too long after
I think it was when we were in high school, right before high school came out.
film. I don't know.
Maybe it was a TV. I think it was a TV miniseries or something like that, or a mini
Oh, okay.
the TV movie.
I'm
But
not-
regardless,
I'm not seeing anything.
we'll find it or something like that, or later on. But I know he was the lead in that for sure.
Let me go back to my list here. Only a couple days left, I think. We have the 3rd, 4th, and 5th coming up. So December 3rd, 1755. I actually had to look this dude up because I actually did not know who he was. A man named Gilbert Stuart was born on this day, December 3rd, 1755. You probably don't know that name, but Gilbert Stuart was a very famous portrait artist. And he painted the portraits for the first 6 presidents of the United States, as well as many other prominent figures in world history at that time. I think I saw Napoleon's brother was on there. A lot of people from the American Revolution, a lot of royals from
Joseph.
Europe. I don't remember his name, but something like that, yeah. So the portrait of George Washington that's on the $1 bill, that's his painting.
Okay.
So like that's where like probably most of you will know. They've obviously changed the pictures on like the bigger bills now, but the $1 bill's been the same for a while. So like he was responsible. There are like many famous portraits of Washington. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of them might even be gone just because of the British burning down the White House.
Yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause didn't Jefferson's wife save some portrait of Washington? I think.
Oh, so maybe that one is one of them that was saved. But anyway, he was a very prominent portrait artist at the time, so I thought he was worthy of being included in this week. December 3rd, 1818, the state of Illinois becomes the 21st state in the Union.
Sweet home Chicago. Sorry.
Yes, this is true. So I guess we've had seems like I guess this time of year was big for like adding states.
Yeah,
It seems like with the last couple of months we've had a whole bunch of states.
Now up until like the beginning of October, I believe.
Yeah.
So when it started.
And December 3rd, 1989, President at the time, George H.W. Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev announced the official end to the Cold War in like a joint press conference thingamabob.
And then the Soviet Union soon after
Within like 2 years, I think.
collapsed.
Yeah, collapsed. December 4th, 1892. I don't really know that this person's birthday is worth celebrating, but he is a significant person in world history. Francisco Franco was born on this day
The
in 1892.
Spanish.
Right. He came to power as like the leader of the Communist Party in Spain. In the Spanish Civil War, which was in the mid to late mid 30s, really, I guess. Kind of like a proxy war-ish for World War II, with like the Nazis helping him out at the time, and then like Britain
Stalin.
and France trying to help the
Stalin
the-
or the
more
Russians
fascist
helped
side.
out too as well, but I
Yeah.
forgot which side.
Yeah.
There's so many different factions. It was ridiculous, honestly, in that war specifically. Between like the actual like Spanish like people, there was probably like 6 different factions with 3 operating on one and 3 operating on the other, but some of the weird triangle combination didn't really agree on certain things.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of hectic. Reading Homage to Catalonia was crazy, just to find out like the George Orwell surviving this like firefight in, I forgot which city it was. Maybe it was actually Catalonia. With his wife.
Catalonia is a state, or like the equivalent of a state.
Okay, or I forgot what city it is. I think maybe it's Madrid or
probably like Barcelona.
Or Barcelona. It's one of those two or another one. And being in that actual city and like not knowing who was your enemy and trying to prevent someone from shooting you for telling you or like asking like, oh, what side are you on? Like you never knew. Like that kind of like stuff is like crazy.
So obviously a pretty important decade in European and world history, and also kind of a technological, like separate from like the Spanish politics of it, like a technological testing ground for a lot of things that ended up being prominent in World War II, like military technology.
And it was also like a weird transition from 1 to 2, because a lot of it was similar. That's similar stuff from 1, but also the stuff that was happening in 2, I guess. Like trenches and whatnot in this one.
Yeah.
Very prominent, but yeah.
That takes us to our final day for this week, December 5th, 1782. The 8th President of the United States, Martin Van Buren, is born, taking over from Andrew Jackson.
He was the vice president.
Right, yeah. So, any interesting presidential?
The only president to be born where his naturalized language was not English.
Okay.
He spoke Dutch.
Okay.
And he's the actual one that put the policy of Andrew Jackson of the removal, or what was it called?
Relocation.
Relocation.
Yeah. The Trail of Tears.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the only ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, so not necessarily something you want to be famous for.
Yeah. Oh, he created the parties, like the not party system. At the time, like there was different Democrats that would run against, like a bunch of Democrats would run against each other in the main election.
Okay.
He started it. I think he's from either New York or Massachusetts. I think it's New York, where he started it in his area where it was like the best, or they would have primaries basically. I think it's what he basically is the father of that, and basically would make sure that they would get primaried before, so they wouldn't lose votes, because he was like, this is a stupid system, and then eventually spread through the country like that.
Okay. Another birthday, December 5th, 1901. Some random guy named Walt Disney was born. Not really sure that he ever like did anything.
You know, where was he born in? What specific place? Did it say?
I did not.
Okay, you don't
write that
look. You
down.
don't have to look it up.
I just put it down that it was his birthday.
Okay.
Mickey Mouse's anniversary of his creation or debut was not too long ago either. So, obviously, Walt Disney has had a permanent impact on culture, the global culture, really, with just how like big of a company that has become.
Yeah, and his last name is literally embedded into like so many minds.
Yeah.
Just Disney.
Yeah.
Disney this, Disney that, Disneyland, Disney movies.
Yep.
He actually did the original voice of Mickey as well. And then the guy I just interviewed this past week did a song that was based off of something he sang.
Oh, okay.
And he covered it, I guess, but like did like a modern take of it. But yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Two more that we have here. December 5th, 1921. Great Britain and Ireland reach an agreement that secures Ireland's independence from the United Kingdom. So kind of a big, obviously there still is a lot of tension at times there, and later into like the 60s, 70s, 80s, even like the 90s as well. Like really over the last probably 50 years, there's been a fair amount of tension between those, I guess, factions.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflict. There was a mini series on it was probably not the first revolts against England that the Irish did, but it was right during World War I believe, the timing of it. Very weird series. I forgot what it's called. Maybe it's called Revolution or something like that. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. And then the recent Jackie Chan movie that came out.
It's called The Foreigner.
Yeah, that one had
actually just saw that movie like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and it had like
Pierce Brosnan,
but it also had like weird hints or little stuff that if you understand that part of history, you would understand what was
it
going
was like
on.
Pierce Brosnan's character was kind of like towing the line, where like he worked for the British government, but like he was also kind of like the head of the a branch of the IRA.
Yeah. And then also Brexit has a lot to do with Ireland too at the moment. Just because what they've set like as possibilities of like Northern Ireland either joining or continuing to be its own.
Right. Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. But it's also like weird when I found out like, oh, that's Northern Ireland. But yeah, it's all connected, but it's not. It's kind of just it's just awkward to like find out that stuff. That's still part of.
I mean, it's well, yeah. I mean, Northern Ireland is still part of the UK, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of the island. It's just the north.
Right. Yeah. And there's and between even those two, like there's a huge like religious divide as well.
Yeah, because Protestants,
yeah.
and then Roy McIlroy comes from Northern Ireland.
This is true. Our last point. I guess you always remember this because of the number. The 21st Amendment was passed, as my phone just shut down right there. December 5th, 1933 is the passing of the 21st Amendment. And you can remember that because you can be 21 when you drink, because the 21st Amendment ended Prohibition, which had been running for 12 years, maybe 13 years when Prohibition was put in. So
crazy. And it's still a lot of those kind of laws have lasted a long time. I think it was until recently, like pretty recently, South Carolina became not dry in general, like in the 70s maybe. And then there's still dry counties around the country that are still impacted because of this, the amendment that brought Prohibition. But yeah, it's crazy. I still like that story from listening to American History Tellers on the first trucks that left Budweiser.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, but yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So that's it for this week in history. And that's it for, I think, all of our topics.
That is it. Ladies and gentlemen,